that this webinar is being recorded, and it's our intention that the recorded webinar will be available later on the redtreehouse.org website for viewing. Everyone's line is muted right now, and we just do that for the simple fact that we have roughly 200 participants that have signed up for this phone call, and if we didn't have the lines muted, we would all be hearing and picking up any background noise or office noise that is taking place. So for that reason, we've muted your line. I wanted to just also make you aware that you should see that you have a control panel for the webinar, and one of the options in the control panel, there should be a question bar, and if you click on the little, it looks like a plus sign by the question bar, it opens up a box that enables you to type in any questions that you might have that you would like answered during the webinar, time permitting, and if there are any questions we're not able to get to, we'll definitely get back with you after the webinar. It also allows for you to communicate if you're having any problems hearing myself or the presenters that will be talking in just a few minutes. Again, Wendy Grove will be presenting and doing a couple points during the webinar. I believe she'll be pausing for questions, but again, you can either type your questions into the question box, or on your attendee line on your webinar controls here, you'll see it looks like a hand. You could click on that, which is the equivalent of raising your hand because you have a question. And when we do pause for questions, I can try to unmute your line, and you can then ask Wendy directly whatever questions you might have. So you can either use that option, or you can type in the question box, and we will move forward from there. Okay, what I'd like to start with is I'm going to turn things over to Linda Kresny. She's Program Manager at the Ronald McDonald House of Cleveland, and she's going to welcome all of us to the webinar, and then she'll be turning it over to Wendy. So, Linda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, which is co-hosted by Red Treehouse and the Ohio Department of Education Office of Early Learning and School Readiness. Red Treehouse is Ohio's online resource for promoting and supporting the physical, emotional, intellectual, and social development of children and young adults prenatal to age 25. RedTreehouse.org connects families and professionals to resources, organizations, and events for learning, help, and support. And we invite you to visit RedTreehouse.org for more information. Thank you, David, for providing the technical support for today. And at this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Wendy Grove, Director of the Office of Early Learning and School Readiness in the Ohio Department of Education.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, David. I am thrilled to be with you today, and I will just move through the slides, pause a few times for questions, and our hour will be up before we know it. David, next slide, please. Today we're going to focus on a few key areas. We're going to talk about the kindergarten readiness assessment. I am going to give you quite a bit of background and information about this new assessment tool being used in Ohio. We're also going to talk briefly about what to consider when deciding to start your child in kindergarten. And then lastly, we'll spend a few minutes on activities and things that you can do as parents for making sure your child is ready for kindergarten. Next slide. So we want to talk about standards and assessments. The focus in Ohio has been on supporting children through the development and making sure that when we do assess children, we are looking at the whole child and not just one piece or part, and trying to extrapolate or make inferences about how they will do in their academic journeys just by looking at one piece and part. Next slide, please. So to that end, the Ohio Department of Education and its partners across the state have worked on creating comprehensive standards in all areas of school readiness. I will get to a little more detail there. But what the result of many years of work and time and effort led to birth to kindergarten entry standards that were adopted by the State Board of Education in 2012. And currently we are working on kindergarten through grade 3 standards that will help that development continue through what we think of as the end of early childhood at grade 3. Then there are new child assessments or measures aligned to these standards for both preschool and kindergarten. Next slide. So starting with the birth to kindergarten entry standards, what we did here in the state of Ohio is stop talking about infancy, at children in their particular ages, and really talk about this trajectory from birth until when they start close-area education, and looking at the total child and looking at what we call the essential domains of school readiness. What the research literature tells us about when children are ready to receive instruction at the kindergarten age. So when we adopted when we created these standards in 2010, 11, and finally adopted in 2012, we looked across these standards. So there are standards about language and literacy, so how your child is talking, how they are reading in their earliest years, and their cognition, their thinking. And these include things, of course, around math, science, and social studies. Approaches towards learning, and this is usually the one that gets the most questions, but this includes things like initiative and curiosity, planning and action, and expression of ideas and feelings. Also things like creativity, persistence, and attention, how they engage. Also our social and emotional development, and so how children are aware and expressing their emotions, how they understand the idea of self-concept and who they are in relation to others, how they feel, how they regulate, how they self-regulate and control their own behavior, and how they are attached to significant others in their life, and then eventually peers. And then the last standard circles around physical well-being and motor development, and then this is about how your body is working and how your child comes to understand health and their body and their movement. So how their body develops and is able to move, and how they engage in things like safety practices and that kind of thing. Next slide.
Wendy, if I can jump in here, we've had a couple of folks that have requested if you could speak a little bit louder.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell them, and let me know if that is not better. So now that we have comprehensive standards from birth to kindergarten entry here in the state of Ohio that cover the essential domains of school readiness, so we're looking again at the whole child, and they cover the entire period from birth to kindergarten entry, we have an early childhood comprehensive assessment system. So next slide, please. What the early childhood comprehensive assessment system aims to do is to support children's development and academic achievement so that we improve their educational outcomes. We also want to measure the progress of children in all areas of school readiness. So this is why we are assessing children in this comprehensive assessment system. Next slide, please. The first of these is their kindergarten readiness assessment. So let's go to the next slide, David. Give you some background. There we go, yes. Keep going. So again, as I've talked, this kindergarten readiness assessment is based on the early learning and development standards. It was adopted in the fall of 2012, which covers all of the essential domains of school readiness. And there should be one more piece on this slide. There we go. In the fall of 2014, we implemented this kindergarten readiness assessment across the state of Ohio. Over 8,000 teachers were trained, over 1,700 schools participated, and over 138,000 children took the kindergarten readiness in its inaugural year. Data was collected from all of these, the children who participated, in order to set the standards for how this new tool, which was developed in Ohio in conjunction with the state of Maryland, just for your information, in order to set the standards. And so we had to take all of the data and then go through a rigorous process that allowed us to say what the scores actually mean as far as a child being ready for kindergarten instruction or having an emergent readiness, demonstrating readiness, or not quite ready yet. Next slide. So what does this kindergarten readiness assessment cover? Well, it covers those essential domains of school readiness that we talked about. The early learning and development standards are also covering, which is, again, your language and literacy, your math, science, social studies, those approaches toward learning, social and emotional development, as well as physical well-being and motor development. Next slide. I think it's important that everyone understand how the results are being used. So the results, now that standard setting is complete, excuse me, and we have meaningful scores, we will be returning those scores to the school districts, which will become immediately available upon the finished this year. Once they are done with the assessment, they will have this data immediately. This was the first and only year it was not available. But this is how they're going to use it. It will help teachers identify where children need supports to ensure their success. And it will identify where teachers can individualize instruction to ensure the individual student success. So now that we are measuring these essential domains of school readiness, we will be able to see where a child is ready across the domains. And he or she may not be ready in every single domain, and so there will be opportunities there for learning and instruction tailored to their needs, as well as their strengths. This result of the kindergarten readiness assessment will not ever keep a child from entering kindergarten. It will not be used to keep a child from moving on out of kindergarten either. So it is not an assessment that is meant to have an impact on whether or not a child starts a grade or is promoted to another grade. Next slide. Just some basic facts about the kindergarten readiness assessment. All students in public and community schools are required to participate. They take it anywhere between the first day of school and November 1st. It will fulfill a different requirement for a language and literacy assessment if it is completed by September 30th. So if the language and literacy portion of the kindergarten readiness assessment is done by September 30th, then the child does not have to take another assessment for their language and literacy in order to meet the third grade reading guarantee requirement. Let me stop there and see if there are questions waiting around the kindergarten readiness assessment.
Wendy, we had one participant ask, will parents receive a copy of their child's scores on the KRA?
Oh, this is an excellent question. Yes, they will. So there will be an individual student report that the teacher can print out and provide to the parent. And we would encourage that, yes. So there will be, items. You will have the results from each of the domains in the kindergarten readiness assessment, as well as an overall score.
Another question is, do students with special needs take the assessment as well as typical students?
So yes, the answer is that all students can take the kindergarten, will will take the kindergarten readiness assessment. There are accommodations for students with various disabilities that should allow for each student to participate.
Another question is there a separate language and literacy assessment?
There is not. So language and literacy is a part of the kindergarten readiness assessment. There will not continue to be, at least at the state, a requirement to do something different to assess language and literacy.
Okay. If delays are identified, will the child receive an IEP?
So this kindergarten readiness assessment is not a evaluation that would allow a child to come into special education. For that, you would have to ask for an evaluation for your child. Every single school district has a website or a contact, and if you are a preschool parent who is wondering if your child will be eligible for special education, either in preschool or coming into kindergarten, then you should be requesting that an evaluation is done in order to determine eligibility for either special education preschool or special education starting in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. Only children who are then eligible for special education will end up having an individualized education program or an IEP.
Another question was, it sounds like the assessment gets taken after a child has already started kindergarten. What about preschoolers, or shouldn't it be done in advance?
Well, this is a very good question. So we actually don't want to do the kindergarten readiness assessment in advance because, again, it's not a tool that was designed to make decisions about whether a child actually starts kindergarten. That is your choice as the parent. Your child will start kindergarten if they are age eligible in the school district and if you decide that it is his or her time to go to kindergarten. What's important to know here about the kindergarten readiness assessment is that it was created to be an authentic assessment. What that means is that we want to see the child in the classroom environment. We want the assessment to occur as he or she is in his kindergarten schooling activities. And so there are items on this kindergarten readiness assessment that are observational, that actually do not take any interaction, but is the kindergarten teacher watching the child as he interacts throughout different activities. There are also questions that have him complete a task. So, there are things that they want to see if he knows how to do, and so for those it is a one-on-one instruction, one-on-one observation and activity. And so it was not created to be given for either the decision to start kindergarten or not or outside of the kindergarten day. What I do want to tell you all is that Ohio is currently working on an assessment that can be and is created for giving to preschool-age children called the Early Learning Assessment. This will be rolled out in next calendar year in 2016 and made widely available. Children who are in child cares of high quality and step up to quality rated centers and programs will use this early learning assessment, and the good news is it is aligned completely to the kindergarten readiness assessment. So children, we will have a very good sense of where they are along their learning progressions and their readiness for kindergarten. But the kindergarten readiness assessment is not, was not created or meant for use before a child starts kindergarten.
Okay. Could you also speak to how long it takes to administer and who administers it, the kindergarten teacher or someone else?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So in the first year of administration, and I don't have the average numbers, but what we do know is that we heard from kindergarten teachers that it was taking a significant amount of time. So what has happened since this fall administration of the kindergarten readiness assessment are a few things. We collected data and input from teachers, and we got their feedback on how the assessment could work better for them. The second thing we did is we know very few teachers, either because they didn't know how, or they didn't feel comfortable, or because they just didn't use the technology that was available. We know that if the people administering the kindergarten readiness assessment use technology, that it will likely take a less amount of time. That being said, we worked on a reduction of the kindergarten readiness assessment after we had this first year of data. And so now it is gone from 63 items to 50 items, which is about a 21% reduction overall. We have field tested it with several children since the reduction, and we are showing on average that it is taking under 45 minutes to do all domains of this assessment. It is done by the kindergarten teacher. It can be done, and there are others who can help with this. Often there are assistants in the classroom, or other teachers who can help as well. But it is meant to be delivered by the kindergarten teacher.
A couple of other quick questions. Is the assessment used to identify where interventions are needed individually?
So interventions it's not the word I would use. It is meant to identify a child's strengths as well as where he or she could use support. An intervention is really a little bit stronger of a word, and so we do want, and this assessment is made to see where a teacher can individualize instruction for any of the children who go through it. So in that way, absolutely, it will inform the teacher's ability to provide activities and opportunities to strengthen the areas where any child might have not yet had demonstrating the skills. But as far as an intervention, I don't want people to confuse it that it is a diagnostic. It will not be used for identifying disability or needs for a child as far as, on the special education side. Now, if you have a child who has a disability or multiple disabilities, they will participate in this with accommodations, and so you will get some information that will help his or her team make some decisions about his needs or instruction, and possibly interventions if he will be on an IEP.
Okay. There are a couple of other questions, but I don't want to
I'm a little worried about our time. Yeah.
Okay, well, why don't we just continue on, and I've got the questions. And again, any questions we don't get to, these questions are, again, in the question box. We will have a record of those and be able to get back with you following the webinar if we're unable to get to your question during the webinar.
I put this slide in here because I just wanted to make sure that the families and those others on the phone understand that kindergarten readiness is linked to the third grade reading guarantee in a positive way. The first positive way is that it reduces an additional assessment that needs to be conducted while still allowing us to assess where your children are on all of those essential domains of school readiness. In previous years here in Ohio, we were assessing children's language and literacy at the start of kindergarten, but that's all we were assessing. And now we are able to look at the whole child and all of these domains of readiness while also looking at his or her language and literacy. And the third grade reading guarantee says that all children will be reading proficiently by the end of their third grade. There will be diagnostics. So this is in kindergarten and first grade and second grade, there will be tests that allow us to know if a child is having a need for intervention in their language and literacy development. In that way, the language and literacy portion of our kindergarten readiness assessment fulfills this requirement. So when someone asked previously if the kindergarten readiness assessment would identify where a child needs intervention. For the overall kindergarten readiness assessment, it would not. But the language and literacy portion of the kindergarten readiness assessment will do that. It will allow us to see if interventions are needed in language and literacy at the kindergarten age in order to make sure that kiddo is on track for achieving successful reading by 3rd grade. Okay. There is also a requirement for family involvement in the 3rd grade reading guarantee. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that families are asked to be a part of a reading improvement plan when there is one that's necessary. They are part of the plan and notified about the plan for their own child in order to get him or her on track for that 3rd grade reading guarantee. So, next slide. I want to shift here into what you should be considering when you're thinking about whether or not your child is ready for kindergarten. Next slide. So under approaches toward learning, these are your foundational behaviors, your dispositions, attitudes that children bring to social interactions, and their learning experiences. And so here we're talking about whether or not as a preschooler your child takes risks to seek new experiences, if they ask questions about things that interest them, if they initiate and carry out simple plans in order to achieve a goal, if you see them focused on activities with deliberate concentration, these kinds of things, if they are persistent on activities appropriate for their age. If they're interested in something or if they have a task, even if they become frustrated, if they persist. And if you see them using imagination and creativity to interact with objects. And if they express individuality and an interest in, and they show appreciation for the creative work of others. These are just some examples of approaches toward learning. Next slide. The things that you want to look for your preschooler doing. In cognition and general knowledge, these are things like acknowledging, working with simple numbers, simple math concepts, knowing their numbers, and there's no magic bullet here. It's not if they can count to 20, they're ready. If they can only count to 10, they're not. Please don't think that. These are just guidelines about what the kinds of things we would expect preschoolers who are coming up to entering kindergarten to know. There are things, we want them to be curious and observant and questioning around, things that are outside, sort of, nature and plants, as it does get to the science concepts. We want to know if, they can organize things, sort them by either color. I mean, we talk about blocks a lot, those kinds of things. Can they sort into a group? Can they find patterns even in objects? And, can they count to 10 by touching objects and that kind of thing? Next slide. Our physical well-being. So under physical well-being, we want to, at the end of preschool, the kinds of things that you would consider is whether or not your kiddo is following basic safety rules with modeling and support. So remember, they're 3 to 5 years old. They do need modeling and support here. Do they have a basic understanding about eating a variety of foods will help the body grow and that they'll be healthy? Do they independently complete personal care tasks? things like going to the bathroom and hand washing and teeth brushing. And again, with supports here, but they should start to be doing this in their pre-kindergarten months here to independently complete these tasks. And with modeling and support, are they able to look both ways across the street, follow pedestrian safety rules, and do they know how to come to an adult for help in these things? Do they reach for your hand across the street? And then are they identifying the consequences of not being safe in their behavior? All right. The next slide, David. Language and literacy. So under language and literacy, and we will talk a lot about this in things that you can do, but the things that you would want to be able to see your child working on in these preschool years and giving them opportunities for are being able to read well by being able to, they're not going to be reading at this age, sorry, just read that. Letter recognition, so we want them to be able to recognize and say some uppercase letters as well as lowercase letters. We're hoping that they're recognizing some letters in their own name and that they recognize their own name when they see it. They know that letters are used to create words and that they're able to do some common words by sight, things like stop on a stop sign. Recognizing rhymes in familiar stories or songs, and recognizing when a word may begin with the same sound, such as, you know, bat and bird, so that they understand that, you know, if you say something like, well, there's a bird, can you think of another word that starts with a B, that they may be able to come up with that. We're also hoping that the child is acquiring vocabulary and that is growing as they grow, you know, and able to put things together in groups, say by color or by, you know, say there are pictures of food, words, apple, pizza, that kind of thing. I'm able to group things together in that way. Okay. How about the next slide, David? Under their social and emotional development in these pre-kindergarten years, we would hope to see that children are recognizing and identifying their own emotions and the emotions of others so that they can talk about when they are sad or when someone else is sad, and that they can communicate a range of emotions in socially acceptable ways, that they compare their own characteristics to the characteristics of others. This is under the idea of self-concept, so that they are they're beginning to understand that they have characteristics and how that is the same or different from other folks. That they're showing confidence in their own abilities to accomplish routine and familiar tasks, so that hopefully they are getting these opportunities to be successful in routine things, putting on their shoes and you know, going and retrieving a puzzle to do together, something, you know, all these kinds of little opportunities. So we're hoping to see some confidence, expressing affection for familiar adults, and that they're seeking security from familiar adults when something might be challenging or scary to them. We're also hoping that with modeling and support that they are starting to show awareness of the consequences of their actions. But this is under self-regulation. So here's where they are learning at this age to manage their feelings and thoughts and impulses with lessening guidance from adults, even though it's still obviously you have a role here to play. That they're able to engage in reciprocal conversations with adults for longer periods of time as they enter these pre-kindergarten years, and that they interact with peers in more complex pretend play. So you should see that their pretend play is growing in complexity and in length, and their ability to, you know, even start to negotiate resolving conflicts with their peers and other children that they play with. And then also we would expect to see under social and emotional development that they start to show regard for the feelings of other living things and the needs of other people in distress, so that they would understand that when people are in distress, that there is a need to help them or, you know, comfort them, that kinds of thing. Okay, next slide. What can you do to boost readiness? So here we have a couple of slides. You know, as parents, we know our children best. Are they ready across each and every domain? Most kids are somewhere on a continuum, and so what can you do to boost this readiness? So here we just have overall, we want to provide opportunities in everyday play for learning. So we want to read out loud together every day. We want to play number games, counting, bigger or smaller, sorting, the kinds of things that I mentioned on the early learning and development standards. Outside, exploring nature, growing plants, and talking about how those changes that they see in the plants or outside change over time. I'll get you to some of those basic science concepts. A little more concrete here, you can start a rock or bug collection with your child. Sort and label, use colors. Again, talking about what they see as the things that are similar between their collection of items and the things that are different. Colors, shapes, textures, all good things. Talking about time, days of the week and the difference between night and day, school and weekend days. We're also, things that you can do include praising your child for making good choices. I'm sure everyone knows this one, but this is not in praising every single thing that they do. We want to, this helps their social and emotional development, helps that confidence and that self-regulation if they know and learn when making a good choice occurs. Pointing out the symbols as you walk and ride in the car. Again, these stop signs, flags, exits. And what we, next slide please, David, we really want you to hear that you are your child's first teacher and that you should not underestimate in any way your ability to teach them what they need to know by simply playing together and talking, asking questions, helping them understand the world they live in. There are some of you on the phone or on the webinar who I know have children with disabilities, and this is also for you, and you may have other trusted adults who are also helping you learn how to teach and interact in whatever ways that are different because of the disabilities. But the same is true. You are your child's first teacher. You are the one that they spend time with the most. And so you have the chance and the opportunity to provide these learning opportunities for your child, regardless of his or her limitations or disability. Every child needs their parent involved in their learning. And so you are teaching, your child is learning. The next slide. I just wanted to mention here, because we mentioned it earlier, that the vast majority of children meet the third grade reading guarantee in Ohio, and that even though the kindergarten readiness assessment does have a portion that helps identify needs in order to get children ready and give them the supports that they need in order to meet the third grade reading guarantee. It is much broader than that, but it does have this important component, and so I wanted to mention that. Then the last few slides are really about where you can connect for more information. We have education.ohio.gov. This is a great place to go. You can type in your question or your topic right in the search bar at the top, and often every single page has a person who works at the Ohio Department of Education listed as a contact for that information or for more information, and so that is useful. You can also follow Superintendent Ross on Twitter right there, and then of course we are all over social media. If there are if you're interested in connecting with us on any of these, you will get updates and things. Of course, you could always ask questions as well. So that brings me to the end of the slides and gives us a few minutes for questions.
Okay, a couple of questions have come along. And this first one might harken back to some of the earlier conversations. What about students that do not make the age cutoff? Can the students take the assessment early to see if they can be accepted into kindergarten if they are a month shy of meeting the age requirement?
So not at this time. I don't, right now every school district does have their age cutoff date, and it depends on where you live as to, and when your child's birthday is. So currently we are not using the kindergarten readiness assessment as evidence or demonstrated readiness to make that argument for a child. So no, not at this time. I don't know if it would ever be used like that. But when we do have the early learning assessment in place in another year or so, that will have to be a conversation that we have here about its accepted use and how it would be used in order to support a parent's desire for their child to have early entrance into kindergarten.
How does the third grade reading guarantee affect children with cognitive delays?
How does it affect them? So I know that there are many people here at the department working on making sure that children who have cognitive or other disabilities are receiving the supports and the supports that they need to participate, or exemptions from participating in the third grade reading guarantee. I think it is important to note that Ohio is committed to all children achieving literacy and being able to read to the extent that they are able. If I don't know what you're really asking here, but I want to say that, you know, having an exclusion from an expectation to read because of a disability is not the view of education. So I know that our Office of Exceptional Children, which is special education here in Ohio, if you really want to ask further, I could connect you with them. But they are doing an immense amount of work around student support for third grade reading guarantee, as well as early literacy as well for all of our students in Ohio, regardless of disability.
Is there a writing component on the assessment? And could you give an example of what may be asked of the students as far as writing?
That's a good question. I don't have the assessment in front of me, but I do believe that there is a writing component on there, because about what they could write. But I can't tell you. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me as far as a specific example of what they would be asked.
Okay. One other question, just a housekeeping one, was about when this webinar will be available on the website. I can, from the front end, we hope to have the recording of the webinar back by the end of today, and at which case I'm not sure off the top of my head how long it would take, provided there are no technical issues with getting it up on either Red Treehouse or Wendy, if you intended to put it on to explore putting it on the Department of Education's website, whether that's a possibility. You might be able to answer that better than me.
We didn't have plans to do that as of today, but we certainly could talk about that.
Another question.
Go to the Red Treehouse first, because I know that they were planning on it.
Another question that came in was, what is the current assessment used for preschool students?
So there is no Ohio-wide one assessment. So if your child is in a preschool class and they're in a high-quality child care or preschool within a district, it is likely that they are being assessed. But they could be being assessed with any number of tools. I would certainly ask your child's teacher that. There is not currently one that is required statewide.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, an initial question we have, and this participant joined the webinar a little late, but they wanted to ask, is there evidence that supports benefits to, quote, redshirting children who have late birthdays? This participant's son is 9 days before the cutoff, and they're concerned about his young age.
So I do not know of research that supports this sort of blanket weighting depending just on his age. It really is up to you as the parent, his parents, to say, across these essential domains of readiness, do we think he's ready? If you want the entire early learning and school readiness domains, the early learning and development standards, what I would suggest that you do is go to our website. So it's the education.ohio.gov, and put in ELDS, or Early Learning and Development Standards. And just run through those with your, as parents, just give those a look and see where you think your kiddo is achieving or at the level where you think he would be for his current age. And then I would make that decision at that point. I know there are almost every parent faces this, regardless of where the birthday, some don't have a choice because the birthday is clearly not going to make it. Some make the choice to argue for early entry, and some do, this. They worry about their child being very young in the class. So there is not an overarching, feeling on this from the research literature. It really is about the individual child and his or her readiness. So I would encourage you to run through those essential domains of readiness and just see what you think.
Another question we have is it possible to get a copy of the actual test for teachers in private schools who are preparing students for kindergarten?
So we are having conversations at the department right now about the inclusion of schools that are not required by law to participate. And so trust me when I say we have engaged those folks who have come to us with an interest in doing this. And so we are having those conversations. If you are from an organization and you're wondering if your school could participate, I would definitely ask you to reach out to us. We are having these conversations, and so expect there to be continued conversation about exactly how that opportunity will be made available.
We also just had a question asking if the participants of this webinar will be provided with a copy of your PowerPoint presentation, Wendy.
Oh, how do you typically do that? Absolutely, it's available for you if you want it.
I think that would be excellent if we can early next week. We'll send it out to all the registrants that were on our webinar, and so they can then utilize it as well. And so we'll get you that, and then we'll also, as stated before, it's our intention to have the full recorded webinar in the near future on the redtreehouse.org website as well.
Okay.
know we're getting kind of close to 1 o'clock. Does anybody else have any additional questions? Well, I do want to, again, just advise all of those of you that, thank you so much for taking time to participate in the webinar. You should probably, in the next day or so, you'll receive an email with a survey about the webinar, as well as a email address for any additional questions. I don't know about you, but every time I'm on a webinar, the minute I get off it, like 5 minutes later, I think of 2 or 3 more questions I wish I had thought of earlier. And we'll want to obviously try to address and answer those questions as well. But Wendy, I do not see any other questions at this time. So thank you again so much for this information. I'm a parent of a potential kindergartner myself, and I found it very valuable.
Oh, thank you all for the opportunity and the time, and for your thoughtful questions. Obviously, you can get in touch with us here at the Department of Education. Anytime, if you have a question specifically for me, you can reach me at wendy.grove@education.ohio.gov. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon and weekend, everyone.